The radio crackled with static. A voice on the other end spoke cold and final. Operative down. Mission compromised. No signs of life. Presumed KIA. 29-year-old Staff Sergeant Avery Rogers lay against blood-soaked rocks, listening to her own death being reported. Mud clung to her face. Her blonde hair was matted with blood and dirt. Her HK-416 rifle was empty. Her extraction team was already 3 hours late. The enemy celebrated nearby. To them it was over. The American infiltrator, who had haunted them for weeks, was finally gone. Her commanders back home believed the same. To the world, Avery Rogers was dead, but she was still breathing. And what they didn't know was that she had survived worse. A 30-foot fall into a ravine, a mountainside ambush. They thought death would stop her. What they didn't realize was that being declared dead had just removed the last thing holding her back. The orders to minimize casualties and avoid unnecessary engagement. Now she had no orders. No restrictions, no backup. Only her training, her will, and her mission. For 3 weeks, Avery had been operating deep behind enemy lines. Her task sounded simple. Gather intelligence on a terrorist cell, identify targets, and wait for a strike team to finish the job. But intelligence was wrong. The cell wasn't just planning one attack. They were building a vast network, working with multiple groups across the region, and they had discovered her presence far earlier than expected. On her 21st day in the field, they struck. At dawn, Avery was watching the compound from her hidden position when she noticed movement that didn't fit the routine she had studied. Too many armed men, too purposeful. Closing in, she triggered her emergency beacon, grabbed her gear, and started moving toward her extraction point. But the enemy knew her routes. The first sniper round missed her head by inches. Rock splintered where her skull had been a second earlier. Her training took over. Roll, cover, return fire, move. Every second mattered. The firefight stretched for hours across the rugged terrain. Avery was outnumbered 20-1. They knew the ground better. They had more men and more ammo. Everything was against her, but Avery wasn't ordinary. She had survived SEAL training, one of only a handful of women in history to do so. Fire and movement, use of terrain, silent discipline, tactical thinking under pressure. These were second nature to her. Her rifle spoke in sharp bursts, keeping enemies at a distance while she maneuvered. For 2 relentless hours she fought, a one-woman battle that could have broken entire squads of Marines. But she was still human. Ammunition was running low. Her extraction team's updates came through the radio. Nightfall 7, this is Overwatch. Extraction delayed due to hostile air activity. Hold position and maintain concealment. Overwatch, I'm in active engagement with 20 hostiles. I cannot hold position. Moving to alternate extraction point. The answer crushed her hope. Negative, Nightfall 7. Alternate extraction compromised. Hold position. She was caught between enemy forces closing in and her own command unable to reach her. Orders said wait. Reality said waiting was suicide. As the sun set, Avery found herself pinned on a ridge. Below lay the compound and her alternate extraction point. Between her and safety stood 30 more armed fighters. Her radio hissed again. Nightfall 7. Hostile missile activity in your area. We cannot provide air support or extraction until threats are neutralized. How long? Minimum 12 hours, possibly longer. Can you hold position? She looked down at the compound. She looked at her dwindling ammo. She remembered what she had uncovered. This wasn't just one attack. They were planning a wave of simultaneous strikes across multiple countries. In less than 48 hours, if she waited, thousands of innocent lives would be lost. Orders told her survive. Her conscience told her finish the mission. She raised the radio once more. Overwatch, I'm experiencing comms issues. Switching to backup frequency for check. And just like that, she cut the line. No more orders. No more hesitation. Avery Rogers was on her own. Under the cover of night, she crept closer to the compound. For 2 hours, she studied their defenses. Guard rotations, sentry patterns, weak spots in the fence lined with razor wire. At 2 a.m., she made her move. A guard tower rotated on a 45-second cycle. That was her opening. She crossed open ground like a shadow. The guard never even knew she was there before her knife silenced him. Inside, danger multiplied. 40 armed fighters patrolled the grounds, but Avery had watched them for weeks. She knew their routines better than they did. She moved like a ghost through the shadows, every step calculated. When she reached the command center, she froze. Through the window, she saw maps, communication gear, and operational schedules spread across the tables. The planned attacks weren't just local. They stretched across 3 continents: airports, schools, shopping malls, government buildings. Her blood turned cold. If they succeeded, the casualties would be beyond anything anyone had imagined. She began gathering evidence. But just as she did, alarms erupted across the compound. Someone had noticed something. The hunt was on, and Avery knew she couldn't just escape with intelligence. She had to make sure this network would never harm anyone again. The alarms screamed through the compound. Flashing lights, shouts in foreign languages, boots hitting the ground as fighters scrambled from every corner. Avery slipped into the shadows, her heartbeat steady, her mind sharp. She had trained for moments like this. SEALs were taught to disappear, to move where the enemy never expected, to strike with precision and vanish before anyone could react. She moved along the outer wall, counting patrols. Every second the enemy grew more alert, more desperate to find the intruder. But Avery had already mapped their blind spots. The first guard she encountered never saw her coming. Silent, swift, ruthless. The second guard was trickier. He stood in a position where his absence would be noticed. She had to improvise. Using his own body to maintain the illusion, she made it look like he was still on duty, while his life had already ended. Step by step, she crept closer to the command center. Inside, through narrow windows, she saw the terrorist leaders bent over maps and radios. Their plans were bold and devastating. Airports, schools, shopping malls, government buildings, all scheduled for the next 48 hours. Avery's hands tightened around her rifle. This was no longer just about intelligence. This was about stopping an attack that could kill thousands of innocent people. She entered silently, taking out the guards with precise professional strikes. Then she began photographing every detail: target lists, maps, communication logs, weapons caches, evidence that would allow counter-terrorism units to prevent every single attack. But then, her luck broke. A careless sound, a shadow in the wrong place, a pattern disturbed. Someone outside noticed. The alarm grew louder. The compound shifted into full lockdown. Avery had 2 choices: escape with the intelligence or destroy the enemy completely. Her decision came instantly. She would not run. She would end this here. She planted explosive charges in the communication center, in the weapons storage, and in the vehicle bays where bombs were being built. Each charge was perfectly placed, designed to cripple the compound's ability to fight back. Then she began hunting. Room by room, hallway by hallway. Her rifle coughed quietly with each suppressed shot. One by one, terrorist leaders fell. One by one, fighters vanished into silence. She was outnumbered, but she was everywhere. A ghost in the dark, a shadow with deadly purpose. Her HK-416 rattled in short bursts, precision shots never wasted. Ammunition was low, but her movements were flawless. She used the enemy's confusion against them, alarms blaring, explosions rocking the ground, shouts echoing in panic. They had no idea where she was, but they were learning. By the time she had eliminated her 15th target, the remaining fighters began to coordinate. They blocked escape routes, they tightened their perimeter, they swept the compound with overlapping fields of fire. Avery was forced into the main building. 25 fighters closed in from all sides. Her ammo was nearly gone. The charges were armed but not yet detonated. She had to move fast. She activated her emergency beacon, transmitting the intelligence photos in bursts, knowing the data might reach her command even if she did not. Then, with calm precision, she triggered the explosives. The communication center erupted into flames. Their radios fell silent. Seconds later, the weapons cache ignited in a violent roar, tearing through walls and scattering debris. The vehicle bay exploded, fuel tanks turning the night sky into fire. Chaos ripped through the compound. Fighters screamed. Confusion replaced coordination. Avery used the distraction to slip through smoke and fire, cutting down anyone who stood in her way. But survival was never guaranteed. A sharp crack rang out. A sniper's bullet slammed into her shoulder, spinning her sideways. Her rifle flew from her grasp. Pain tore through her body. She rolled into cover, gasping, bleeding. More bullets shredded the ground around her. Still, she crawled forward. She had come too far to die here. She dragged herself across open ground toward the perimeter fence, every movement tearing her wounds wider. 20 meters. 15. Another shot. This time her leg. She collapsed into a shallow ditch, vision blurring, body screaming in agony. She activated her beacon one last time. Her voice was weak but steady. Mission complete. Intelligence transmitted. Cell neutralized. Tell my family I finished the mission. She kept crawling. The sniper's bullet missed her head by inches, spraying dirt into her face. Behind her, the compound was burning. Secondary explosions ripping apart whatever was left. 10 meters. 5. With shaking hands, she cut through the razor wire. Blood dripped from her arm. Every second could be her last, but she made it through. On the other side, she collapsed into the rocks, the compound still blazing behind her. She had destroyed the network. She had saved countless lives. But she was broken, bleeding, and alone. Hours later, at dawn, helicopters thundered overhead. Too far, too late. Her beacon went silent at 6:47 a.m. To command, it was official. Avery Rogers had died in the line of duty, but Avery wasn't finished, not yet. Avery's body lay hidden in a narrow ravine, 2 kilometers from the burning compound. Blood loss dragged her in and out of consciousness. Her radio was broken. Her beacon was silent. To the world, she was gone. But 3 days later, she opened her eyes inside a cave. Somehow she had crawled there, her survival kit keeping her alive long enough to stop the bleeding. Radio chatter drifted from the enemy compound. Reinforcements had arrived. They were rebuilding, trying to restore what she had destroyed. They believed the American operative was dead. That belief would be their final mistake. Avery was still alive. Her wounds were healing. Her mission was far from over. She spent the next week in the shadows, watching, listening, healing just enough to move again. The terrorists thought they were safe. They laughed about killing her. They believed their enemy was gone, but being declared dead gave Avery something priceless: freedom. No orders, no restrictions, no oversight. She could fight as she saw fit. She could strike without hesitation. Her eyes were set on a new target. 5 kilometers from the original compound, the reinforcements had set up a new command post. From there, they were trying to reconnect with other cells, rebuild their attack plans, and continue operations. Avery watched them for 2 days, studied guard rotations, learned their habits, counted their weapons. On the 8th day of her death, she moved. The building complex held 15 armed fighters. They were busy with radios and laptops, focused on rebuilding communications, not on defending themselves. They felt secure. Avery approached like a ghost. She entered through a supply building, slipping through shadows, eliminating guards one by one. She moved with silence, speed, and absolute purpose. Every target removed meant fewer civilians in danger. Inside, the command center buzzed with activity. Terrorist leaders spoke into cameras, holding a live video conference with other cells. Their words were chilling. New attacks, new targets, even greater destruction than before. Avery listened from the doorway, heart steady. Finger on the trigger. She stepped inside and opened fire. Precise, ruthless. Every leader in the room fell before they even had a chance to react. But the cameras were still rolling. On the screens, terrorists in other locations stared in shock. They had just watched their allies executed by the very woman they thought was dead. Avery didn't flinch. She stared straight into the cameras. Her voice was low and steady. This is what happens to people who target civilians. Your network is compromised. Your operations are terminated. Your people will be eliminated. Consider this your only warning. Then she destroyed the communication system, cutting off their last chance to regroup. But she didn't leave. Not yet. For the next 4 days, Avery waged her most lethal operation yet. Safe houses, weapons caches, support facilities. One by one, they burned. One by one, she eliminated every cell that had dared to rebuild. She moved like a phantom, striking and vanishing. Fighters whispered in fear. The American ghost, the dead woman who walked. By the end of the week, what intelligence agencies believed would take months of international coordination was already finished. Entire networks, destroyed by a single operative, and Avery Rogers was still officially dead. When she finally activated her beacon 2 weeks later, Command couldn't believe what they saw. Nightfall 7, this is Overwatch. We are showing your beacon, but records indicate you were KIA. Confirm identity. Her voice came through steady, unbroken. Overwatch Nightfall 7. Mission objectives complete. Request extraction and debriefing. I have significant intelligence requiring immediate action. The radio went silent for 30 long seconds. Then the reply came. Nightfall 7, confirm. You are alive. A small smile touched her lips. Affirmative, Overwatch. Very much alive. Mission complete. Ready to come home. 12 hours later, the extraction team found her sitting calmly beside captured weapons and intelligence files, looking less like a survivor and more like a legend. They stared in awe. She had been dead for 2 weeks, and in that time she had done the impossible. The extraction team leader, Chief Petty Officer Marcus Caney, stepped toward Avery, disbelief written across his face. Rogers, according to our records, you've been dead for 2 weeks, and according to intelligence, this network is gone. Want to explain? Avery rose slowly, blood and dust still clinging to her uniform. Chief, they left me for dead. I went back and finished the job. Mission complete. Caney looked at the smoke on the horizon, then at the files she had gathered. He shook his head. Rogers, what you did here, this is beyond special operations. Avery allowed a faint smile. Sometimes, Chief, being dead is the perfect cover for impossible missions. Back at Naval Special Warfare Command, the debriefing lasted 3 days. Senior officers pored over every detail. Her intelligence, her choices, her survival. Admiral Catherine Morrison finally asked, Rogers, you were declared KIA. The mission was over. Why did you continue? Avery's answer was simple. Ma'am, the mission wasn't complete until the threat was eliminated. Being declared dead gave me the freedom to finish what I started. The room went silent. They all knew the truth. What she had achieved alone would normally take months of international action. She had done it wounded, with captured weapons and sheer determination. Weeks later, a new program was born. Classified at the highest level. Operatives who could vanish, survive, and fight without recognition. They called them ghosts, and Avery became their first instructor. From then on, networks disappeared without explanation. Threats dissolved into silence. Only whispers remained. Those who knew the truth remembered one name, Avery Rogers. The operative left for dead, who came back as something more. The terrorists had celebrated her death. It became the last mistake they ever made.